I'm sure people have been waiting for this by the time it gets uploaded. This is my WWE's Armageddon 2008 pay-per-view review. I'm sure people are wanting to know my thoughts on this, and I will give it to them for those of it. I usually do kind of a non-spoiler type of reviews. That's going to be hard with this, of course, because I'm sure, as almost everybody knows, Jeff Hardy did win the WWE title tonight, which is pretty big news, and a lot of people are already bitching about it because they have to find something to bitch about, and I would disagree with that. I will say this about, for those of you that also don't know, and this is a little bit of news for those of you, I think people already know this, that Miz and Morrison won the Raw tag titles from Punk and Kofi, was it not last night, I believe the night before, which I think set up the fact of, you know, anything can happen at a WWE house show, which is probably a good thing because house show business hasn't been too great as of late, so there is that. So, just to kind of start off that, and a lot of people, like I said, are already griping about the Jeff Hardy title switch for a stupid reason, and I will get into that as we go along. This was a great pay-per-view in my opinion. You know, I think every match was as good or better than what we thought it was going to be, and I think most of the matches were actually better than what we thought they were going to be, so that is always a good. And on a pay-per-view that is deemed or is seen as a throwaway pay-per-view, I think that is a great thing to do because it does give the impression of you can't really miss a pay-per-view, which, you know, is a good thing to do. So a lot of people might disagree with that, but that's kind of the way I see it, and I definitely think, you know, the WWE definitely delivered on this card, and unlike what they usually do. So, but we'll get started. Matt Hardy versus Kozlov. This was actually an okay match in my opinion. I think Hardy actually worked a better match with Kozlov than Triple H did, which, you know, I think is saying something. Though, you know, the match isn't as good because you don't have the edge interference and all of that, which really helped that match out. But this was definitely a much better match, I think, than what the match that Triple H was having with Kozlov. 2 stars was okay. Did kind of set up something that would happen later in the night, so that was good. Then we had the match that I think a lot of people were really looking forward to and really thought, you know, maybe maybe a show stealer, and the match I thought should have opened up the card, which was CM Punk versus Rey Mysterio. This was a good match. The crowd wasn't so much into it at first, but that's okay. They got the crowd into it. This turned into an excellent, a pretty good match. 3.5 stars, lots of good reversals. The guys worked really well together. The only bad part was at the end where Punk got to go to sleep, and it looked like actually hit Rey with it and busted up his nose, and it was not a pretty sight, but it was still a really good match. And like I said, I thought that match should have been the one that opened up the show, and it didn't. Then they did the whole angle. They had a Regal sitting at ringside, and they had that whole thing go on afterwards. So this was actually pretty good, and did a good job of setting up the next match as well, which was nice to see, and made it kind of look like they were behind Punk to a degree, so that was kind of fun. Next we got probably the worst part of this pay-per-view, which was an HBK JBL Raw moment, because this should have happened on Raw. It was a continuation of their continuing storyline on Raw, and this was not pay-per-view segment worthy. There are times where you can do a segment like this on pay-per-view, but it has to be done well. This came off more as a Raw segment, and just did not fit in the pay-per-view in my opinion. They even set it up like a match. I mean, they did this really good video package explaining what was going on, and they had them come out, but it was much more of a Raw segment. I think you could have easily done that on Raw. That's just my opinion. Next we got Mark Henry versus Finlay in a Belfast Brawl. This was probably better than most people thought it was going to be. I gave it 2 stars. You could probably even maybe go a little higher than that, depending on how much you enjoyed it. But it was a good little plunder match for what it was, and it was okay match, just your basic average match in my opinion, and pretty good stuff. Next we had Randy Orton versus Batista. To me, this is maybe the one match I was kind of disappointed in, as I thought Orton might be able to get a little bit better match out of Batista, but not really. But still, the fans were kind of into this. This was actually pretty good. The only maybe gripe I would have is Orton maybe should have gone over Batista to carry on the feud, but they might not be carrying this feud on. We really don't know. I kind of hinted that maybe I thought we might, since Orton seems to be getting over more with the fans and Batista is kind of hit or miss, they might turn Batista heel here, have him join the Legacy, and the Legacy turn on Orton, since Orton had always been so hard on the Legacy. Just something I would just thought might happen, but that didn't, and that was just me kind of just in my opinion of what an area that they did. They didn't really go that way. They did kind of hint that they may carry this feud on a little bit more, but it was, you know, it was a mid-card, you know, match. Could have been a main event, but it definitely was built up somewhat like a main event, but didn't deliver like a main event. But it's still a good match. 3 stars. Next we had the Santa's Little Helper match. This was actually entertaining. I'm not going to just call it good as a technical match, but to me it was entertaining. It was fun to watch. I enjoyed watching it, even at the end where Khali came out with the whole kiss cam thing. That even made sense. Then they had Mae Young come out, and he ended up kissing Mae Young, which was, you know, not the best of things. I still think this is more of a pay-per-view moment, given the angle with Khali and the fact that you stuck this match on here. Is more of a pay-per-view segment moment than even the HBK JBL segment was. Even though that segment may have been better, I think this was more of a, this fit the pay-per-view better. Just my opinion. Then we had John Cena versus Chris Jericho. This was definitely better than their last match, which was good to see. I would say John Cena still doesn't look like he's back 100%, but he's definitely back more than he was before. He didn't look as rusty. He didn't look as slow in the ring. His timing didn't look as off like it did in that match. And this was a very good match. I would give this 3 3/4. Lots of reversals. Just, you know, some good stuff. John Cena went over, but we're getting ready to go into the Royal Rumble, so we'll have to see where that goes. We might get more, you know, Jericho versus Cena stuff. I don't know, but you know, it was what it was, and it was entertaining. And then we got Edge versus Triple H versus Jeff Hardy. This, I was kind of wondering about this because they started off really fast, and I thought maybe they wouldn't have a lot of time, but they gave them time, and this was very well booked. At the, you know, you've had the whole Triple H, Jeff Hardy, Kozlov thing going on. Kozlov came down, cost Triple H the match, looked like he was going to cost Jeff Hardy the match. Then Matt Hardy came out, which kind of, you know, was good from the perspective from the first match, and they brawled, and you know, Jeff was able, or Matt was able to get, you know, Kozlov to the back, and then the match continued until Jeff Hardy finally won. The place went nuts. It was a good, you know, the pop was very good. You know, I was watching it. Most people I've talked to that have watched it, man, they all got excited. It was an exciting moment. And you're going to get people who say, why would you do this here, not at WrestleMania? I think if you would have done it at WrestleMania, I think people would have been expecting it at WrestleMania, and I don't think it would have gotten the pop. I don't think it would have gotten the reaction that it got. This was a legitimately surprised reaction, and it worked to that extent. I don't know if we'll have to see how excited it got the fan base going. We'll have to see that. But to me, it worked to that extent. I don't think that would have necessarily worked at WrestleMania. Yes, you would have gotten the WrestleMania moment, but I think this was actually a good call to that extent. Then you have people that say, why would you do this on a throwaway pay-per-view? Why wouldn't you do this on a throwaway pay-per-view? Then you plant the seed, much like, you know, the tag title switching in a house show, that every WWE event is important, and you can't miss a pay-per-view. They have to live up with that. You know, they've done 2 pay-per-views in a row where I would say, you know, probably didn't, people weren't that excited about them, but you've had, you know, you had Edge return, and then you had Jeff Hardy win the title, and I think that brings an element of what's going to happen on the pay-per-views, and that's a good thing to have. So I would disagree with that. Is it a, you know, can you do this all the time? No, you can't do this all the time. But for the people who seem to be, and to me, people seem to be pissed off about this because it didn't happen at a Big 4 pay-per-view, because there are people that normally buy the big 4 pay-per-views. They wanted to see this, and they didn't order the pay-per-view, or didn't they watch pay-per-view, now they're pissed because they missed it. Too bad. That's all I have to say. I don't know what else to tell you. If that's why you were upset about it, at least say that is why you were upset about it. As you know, and like I said, I think the pay-per-view was great. I think they definitely delivered. Even with the Raw segment, I think it worked, because I even think the Kali thing was somewhat entertaining and worked to an extent. And like I said, I thought the Divas match was actually okay. You know, I actually thought it was an okay match. I thought it was entertaining, much like the match from Survivor Series. I thought that match was entertaining. I'm not saying it was a great technical match, but a match doesn't have to be great technically to be an entertaining match. So there is all of that. Overall, an 8.0 on this pay-per-view. Like I said, a lot of people are gonna bitch and complain and say you shouldn't have done that. You should have waited and done this at a bigger pay-per-view. And like I said, I don't think you would have gotten the same reaction that you got, because I think people probably thought, okay, they're gonna wait till WrestleMania. The fans are smarter now. They do get, you know, when things, you know, booking wise, should happen, shouldn't happen. Throwing something like this in there is good, because like I said, it does make it look like, well, you at least have to pay attention to all the pay-per-views, and there really aren't any throwaway pay-per-views, even though that's not necessarily the case. But I definitely think it throws that out there, and it plants the seed in people's minds, and I think that is a good thing. And that's something the WWE needs, because what do I continually hear people say? The WWE is boring. The WWE, you know, the storylines are boring. Everyone knows what's going to have. It's the same old, same old, same old. They do something different, and people are pissed off because they did something different on a pay-per-view that they didn't watch. That's kind of the way I look at it. But overall, I did enjoy this. I enjoyed this a lot. I thought this was very good. Definitely a much bigger improvement over Survivor Series, and I think probably did a pretty good job leading up into the Royal Rumble. I mean, if you really want to get into throwaway pay-per-views, the Royal Rumble is probably the best example of a throwaway pay-per-view, because you want most of the main people in the Royal Rumble, which means the undercard matches are usually throwaway matches in a lot of ways. Usually, you know, they try to put at least one match on there one other match on there, but let's face it, the Royal Rumble sells itself on the Royal Rumble, so there we go with that. Like I said, a very good pay-per-view. I would definitely recommend getting the replay or the DVD when it comes out, as it was very good. And that's the other thing I would say, too. To the people that say, oh, you shouldn't have done this here, keep in mind that probably the WWE didn't get a lot of buy rates with this show, but they're probably going to sell a crap load of DVDs off this show. And to me, there's a whole big thing with, I don't really think the internet wrestling community gets that side of it, gets the DVD sales of it. I mean, you look at even the bad WWE pay-per-views usually do at least good DVD sales. So that's something to always keep in mind. It's something I don't think a lot of people get. I could go on about, you know, that part of it, and, you know,